Hi, good morning all, or good afternoon based on where you're located. Thank you for joining part one of a four-part series that we put together called Vectra MDR in Action. Today specifically addressing the top 3 challenges defending against hybrid attackers here at Vectra. So to start, just quick intros. My name is Barrett Ruiz. I'm the VP of Worldwide Professional Services here at Vectra. And joining me is seasoned Vectra Pro Jonathan Barrett, who's the Senior Director of Consulting Analyst here at Vectra. Today, we want to cover a few things. The first are our top 3 challenges that we find companies face with some real-world examples that really talk through that. I also want to talk about Vectra AI's approach in solving those problems, a little bit about the Vectra MDR methodology, and at the end, after we go through the slides, we have some additional resources that we will talk through, and also open up if time allows for Q&A. So to start, I want to talk about really some data points in regard to challenges companies face. Worked with a lot of customers, both large and small, of various maturity levels. And a lot of the times, customers have products that are sold to them or that they've looked at, but we want to flip the script here. We want to understand what are really the challenges that companies face day to day, and in particular, from an analyst perspective, what are those challenges? And so what what Vectra did was actually pull a bunch of potential customers or analysts out there. 2,000 is the number that were pulled, and ask a few questions. And what we found is really the following. First, 63% say that their attack surface for their organization has increased significantly over the past 3 years. Second, 70% of analysts say they don't have full visibility. There's a lot of areas that they're lacking. There's gaps. 71% of analysts admit that the work that they're tasked with in the organization, they believe that they're actually compromised. They just don't really know. 97% of analysts worry they'll miss an event because they're too flooded. There's too much noise out there. And the reality is, with all of that noise, alerts are being ignored. 60% of analysts say that they're ignoring alerts. Out of those, 83% say we have alerts, but there's a lot of false positives. They're not worth our time. We're just going to mark them, and as a result, something could be missed. A couple of other data points quickly here are 67% of those analysts, because of the noise, because of what they're tasked with, they're considering leaving or have actively left their jobs. As you all know, the cybersecurity world has a lot of open positions. I know there's been a little bit of up and down in the past months because of markets and whatnot, but there's still a lot of open positions that need to be filled. And 70% of analysts say that the tools they have continue to increase. So with all of this, the gaps they have, the more work on their plates, the noise that they have to sift through, really there's 3 key themes or challenges that these boil into. The first is ultimately the attack surface is growing and becoming more complex. The attackers have more ways to get in. It only takes one door to get in to allow the attacker to get to their objectives. The second is the alert noise is deafening. With all the noise, defenders lack fidelity in the signal to really focus and prioritize on what they need to look at. And third, and this is nothing new, but it's definitely still a key challenge, is security skills are in high demand. There's a shortage and burnout is real. Ultimately, recruiting and retaining talent is challenging. And so what Jonathan will talk through is really about what customers are seeing in regard to how this is getting more complex.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. So as Gary was saying, contributing to those metrics that you just went over is the fact that traditionally speaking, many security teams are treating these attack services and their tools as completely separate things, right? This was true today. This is true 10 years ago. And despite the fact that even when working with customers that will say, and they agree that, no, we should be looking at these items together. We should be using tools side by side across endpoint, data center, identity, SaaS, and public cloud. The truth is, when it comes time for the actual process, this is only really happening when it comes time for actual incident response. Sort of general question to the audience, like how many security teams have it set up such that, okay, one analyst is dedicated to a tool here, another analyst is dedicated to another tool, a third analyst is dedicated to a third tool. And that may be for a day, that may be for the week, that may be, they are the subject matter expert. But that is how in practice they actually end up using these things. And that's not entirely a given security team's fault. Traditionally, this is actually very difficult to do. Different technologies, different log formats, everything else like that. But and this is adding to or I'd like to see as an addendum to the adage of defenders think in lists, attackers think in graphs. While defenders are thinking of these as separate pieces, the truth is, attackers are seeing this as a single target, as a single environment that they have to work through to achieve their goals. And to give an example of that, I wanted to walk through a real life example. In this particular case, the intent of the malicious actor was to conduct ransomware. So looking through this, as so many other attacks start, right? There was a well-crafted phishing email. The email security prevented blocking this. This got to the user. This allowed the malicious actor to take those credentials and authenticate via VPN. From there, once the actor had access, began scanning the network, searching around for where they can move laterally, and ultimately, trying to get to a domain controller so they can have the access that they need to conduct their attack. Now, during the scan, what they realize is they need to move to Azure in 365. So they logged in there. Once they had that, they added the account to ownership group for AWS. That allowed, so we've gone from network to Azure so far. This allowed them to move to AWS, where they began continuing their discovery activities, looking for backups, and from there, what permissions were available to them, what permissions were available to other users, how they may be able to escalate their privileges. Again, preventative measures throughout this failing and allowing them to continue this attack. Ultimately, as actors want to do, maintain persistence, right? They create some new access keys to do that. And then begin making changes to block storage to allow for exfiltration prior to the actual encryption. This is fairly standard and just a evolution of what we see with sort of on-prem only ransomware attacks, now including additional cloud services.
Thanks, Jonathan. So we know there's challenges out there, but the question is always, well, how do we solve those? And so for the first challenge, the attack surface is growing and becoming more complex. Here's our approach here at Vectra. It's really utilizing different AI to solve different problems in these different cloud or SaaS solutions that customers are moving toward. And so Vectra AI is really created to help prioritize detections and ensure there's accurate signal and speed at scale. In addition to that, our goal is to reduce gaps in those visibility, but there's a method behind it and there's a reason behind it. And so what we do here at Vectra is really research and understand how attackers think, make sure that we have access to data in all of these different environments that help us reveal attacks that may be there. But really the essence of this is using AI. AI is a common word nowadays in regard to a lot of folks out there. But Vectra, what are those AI models that are custom developed for all of these attacks and how can we use them? What are the analytics in real time that allow us to help identify an attack and scale? And in addition to that, as we're seeing things, what is the feedback loop that we could use to help improve this? And the goals with detect and prioritize is be able to actually implement in all of these areas. So identity, SaaS, public cloud, network, and endpoint. It's really combining all of those because the reality is a lot of companies now have footprints in all of these, and those are very real gaps that are there. Additionally, you want to be able to investigate and respond. And so the idea here is to really give us a platform that allows us to do that.
But it's not just about having data. I think many of organizations and people have, sort of fall into the idea that, if I just have more data, right? But ultimately, dealing with alert noise is real. The average security team a day is dealing with about 4,500 alerts. I think we can all agree that, that's a lot. But that's why, Vectra and as extension MDR takes the approach that it does, right? It's not about single alerts. It's not about single events. It's about what are these entities doing and bringing them together to actually fully understand the activity that we see. Being able to marry up not just network accounts, but along with their M365 equivalents, and seeing this all on a single dashboard and understanding the actual sort of the narrative, the actual flow of a given attack, and being able to see it from a predator's point of view, but then also being able to have all the data that we need to investigate to run that backwards as well. And ultimately, what this allows us to do is have higher fidelity alerting. As just as a quick example, right? A single port scan, that in itself may be something that a normal admin is doing as they're setting up a machine. But if we start seeing that, coupled with additional scanning, more verbose scanning for things like permissions, suspicious administration, all that becomes more suspicious, and that is what we're looking at through the lens that we have.
So the last challenge 3, is ultimately being hard to find and retain talent, and it also being costly to identify and respond to attacks. Wanted to talk through a little bit about how we solve that here at Vectra on the MDR side. So quick summary of the MDR team is that the coverage is important. So the team is 24/7, 365, so that there's somebody always watching around the clock, not just watching, but being able to respond to any attacks that are identified. Global is important. We have a follow the sun model. And so we're able to ensure that given the shortage worldwide and the difficulty in finding talent, that we could find highly experienced folks here at Vectra. And I like to use a phrase here in that it's not just generalists that are utilizing a lot of different tools. These are specialists that know the technology in and out. They have a lot of experience. In fact, average over 10 years experience, including certifications for incident response, security operations, or IT. You find that a hybrid or team of those gives you a really highly capable and effective team to respond, but also to adapt. At Vectra, we've created a model that allows us to adapt our operations and MDR service to meet customer needs. We're able to integrate or operate with large companies with a highly mature operations team. We're also able to integrate and operate with smaller companies that may only have a one-person IT shop. The idea here is to create a model that is easy to get up and running and to help ultimately deliver great outcomes and values to customers. From a Vectra MDR perspective, with this technology, with the right visibility, we want to be able to quickly and effectively not just triage what we're seeing, but to be able to put actions in place to actively stop attacks for our customers.
So to put
good.
Sorry. To put what Gary was saying, succinctly, we know we can keep pace with advanced attacks through our visibility, through our technology and experience. And taking from that, I'd like to walk you through the example that I just did, but with our lens on it. So what we're seeing. So again, as I said, user is phished, credentials are gathered. The actor is scanning the network. We have reconnaissance-based detections as they attempt to find file shares for them to encrypt, machines to move laterally to, domain controllers that they're trying to find. Port scanning, RPC, recon, file share enumeration in this particular case. As they move to Azure and M365, they're taking actions that are not normal or abnormal for this particular account. Azure AD privilege operation. With that newfound access, right, they're continuing the same type of scanning activity that they're doing on the network, right? Only within AWS. Suspicious EC2 enumeration, EC2 browsing activity, trying to find EC2 instances that they can compromise, that they can encrypt, steal data from, right? Just like they would if they're still on the network, looking through user permissions, trying to figure out where they can move to, user permissions enumeration, and suspect escalation reconnaissance. As they try to maintain persistence, the new behavior AWS user hijacking, and finally, public EBS change as they modify the storage block to try to exfiltrate the data. And throughout all of this activity is prioritized. We see these behaviors and we know that in aggregate together, we have these different entities that are worth looking at. And through the investigation can quickly tell that these things are related and something needs to be done. And in that, trying to figure out what can be done, we recognize that there's multiple places that we could actually take action here. As soon as they add themselves to that account group, right? We have Azure lockdown, which we can stop stop the account from taking further activity. But even further from there, along the way, we have greater and greater signal that there's something not right that's happening with these accounts within AWS. And throughout that, able to take action through AWS lockdown to be able to prevent further activity. And ultimately, what this allows us to do is stop most of this from even happening. We have a easily identified and prioritized entity in the account. We can see that the machine that this account is coming from, and from there we can take the appropriate action to lock this from here and preventing everything else.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm actually going to go back a slide and talk through something that I have seen a lot. Right? The reality here is, Jonathan showed, there's a lot of steps along the way that the attacker took in this scenario to get to their objective. And the reality, and I know this for a lot of analysts and defenders out there, is there were gaps or there were certain signals or detections along the way that, if caught sooner in that sequence of events, would have stopped data exfiltration, would have stopped the damage or access to additional environments. And so the key here is, again, the right visibility is critical, but also the right signal, because what we're showing here is, instead of getting all the way to the right of this timeline, the very first signal, which wasn't on an endpoint, it wasn't in an email from an alert from an email filter or solution. It was a signal that said, hey, there's something, there's recon happening. There's an anomaly in regard to privileges, needs to be investigated, and action couldn't be taken. And that's really the goal for Vectra, that not just the technology and the right people to show. You have the technology bubbling something up, you could quickly see it's anomalous and needs to be acted on, and you're able to do it. And it prevents a whole lot of additional time and effort and money and resources in regard to that attack. And so really, to sum up, the challenges and in some of our solutions, at Vectra, we believe that our platform and that MDR delivers outcomes for customers. And that's through having the right coverage, making sure you have the visibility for the attack surface as it grows, unifying that visibility for hybrid and multi-cloud attack surfaces, which a lot of companies are currently using or moving toward. In addition to that, combining signatures with behavior-based threat detection, kind of defense in depth, but the ability to deliver detections in real time from those, whether in the data center or in the cloud. Additionally, the clarity is extremely important. We call that attack signal intelligence. And so using AI, true AI, to actually drive detections and that detect things that look like an attacker. The other thing is being able to quickly triage through AI to know and bubble up what's relevant and malicious and prioritize on what is urgent. And the other key part of that is people, right? The analyst experience, making sure that you have the right coverage. Nobody likes a phone call at 3 a.m. to get online, but being able to adapt the model to fit whatever the company's requirements are in regard to business objectives or even operational objectives. You need to be able to adapt to fit those. And at the end of the day, the main goal is to stop real attacks in minutes, not hours, not days, not weeks, in minutes. So that said, that's what we had for today's first part of the 4 webinar series. So I want to say thank you for joining. Stay tuned for the next part, where we're not just going to talk high level about what we can do. We'll actually show you what we could do. We'll have analyst overview of these scenarios, what we see within the UI, what the analyst does from a triage and analysis perspective, and how we act. And lastly, if you have any questions, we have a little bit of time now, 8 minutes. But if you need additional information or have questions, please send an email to webinars@vectra.ai or check out our website at vectra.ai. There's an MDR section for you as well. Jenny, do we have any questions outstanding here? Okay, I see one. Here's one in regard to Vectra MDR, and does it have a US only operational team? The answer is yes, we have a follow the sun model, but we do have customers that have requirements for US citizens on US soil to manage, monitor, and respond to Vectra within their infrastructure. So we do have US operations. Another question we have is, how quickly can Vectra MDR get up and operational? And this is a really common question that the answer really varies on. We could really move fast, but there's a lot of dependencies in regard to configurations being made from a customer perspective. Are the right API keys able to be provided? Are you able to deploy in a quick fashion? Are there internal change management processes that need to go through? So we could get deployed in a matter of a couple of days, or for some customers that have more complex environments, it could take a couple of weeks. But from our perspective, there's somebody assigned to you for that journey or during that journey to ensure that from a Vectra perspective, you're getting what you need to get up and operational as fast as possible. Okay, I think those are the only 2 last call here. Otherwise, everybody's time is important, so we'll give you back 5 minutes. Okay, well, again, thank you all for joining. Please visit our website or our email webinars@vectra.ai, and we'll be happy to get back with you. Thank you all, and look forward to seeing you on the next part of our series.